know she died the way she did takes my breath away.
Tonight, reaction to an arrest in a double homicide in northern Manitoba.
It is our homeland and an area that many of our families lived in for thousands of years.
A new national park is proposed for Yukon.
So, First Nation styles of dance, Ukrainian dance, ballet, contemporary, it all makes it on stage when I'm choreographing.
And the Canadian premiere of a ballet in Winnipeg by an Indigenous choreographer. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Manitoba RCMP announced today that they have laid charges against a man who they believe murdered 2 people in September 2021. Brent Denechizi and Leona Tazi were fatally shot while at home in Northland's Dene-Siouxland First Nation in northern Manitoba. It's believed the murder suspect then set the residence on fire. On Monday, Manitoba RCMP went to Fond du Lac, Saskatchewan, and arrested Leon Paul Mercredi in connection to the deaths. Mercredi has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the double homicide. Though still seeking information, RCMP believed no one else was involved. Mercredi has been remanded into custody in Winnipeg. Tazazi's mother, Ellen Tazazi, wrote a statement that was read on her behalf.
For the last 3 years, I have thought about it every morning and wondered what happened to my daughter, Leona and Brent. Wondering what happened to her. On Tuesday, we were informed of the shocking and devastating news of how she was taken from all of us. My heart was broken all over again. It hurt so much. I appreciate the RCMP telling me what happened, but at the same time, I wish I didn't know. I thought she had died in a fire. To know she died the way she did takes my breath away. She had a life ahead of her, a good life, and it was taken from her.
You can find much more on that story on our website, aptnnews.ca. As global plastics treaty negotiations take place in Ottawa this week, members of environmental groups stood in support of Aamjiwnaang First Nation. The community is located near Sarnia, Ontario, in an area dubbed Chemical Valley due to the toxic air pollution from nearby petroleum refineries. Last week, high levels of benzene forced members to stay indoors due to a malfunction at the plastics producing chemical plant Ineos Styrolution. In a Thursday morning press release conference, the group called on the federal government to take immediate action to ensure Ineos remains closed until Aamjiwnaang is satisfied that it has met air quality standards. Janelle Newmaybin is a band counselor. She said her community is still in lockdown and some members have gotten sick. She says Indigenous peoples need to be included in the plastic treaty discussions.
With UNDRIP being adopted, it needs to be included in the plastic treaty because the people impacted by plastic pollution from extraction through pipelines to refineries to microplastics are the ones that most impacted, mostly Indigenous people around the world. It's worth mentioning that the environment I live in is a result of inadequate regulations, monitoring, and enforcement.
We'd like to hear what you think about what's been happening in Aamjiwnaang First Nation for many, many years now, or anything else you'd like to get in touch with us about. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a news story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. A celebration took place in the Mohawk community of Ganawage this week. Community members and dignitaries gathered to mark the 40th anniversary of a groundbreaking agreement that led to the creation of the Kateri Memorial Hospital Centre. On April 24, 1984, the Mohawk Council of Ganawage signed a nation-to-nation agreement with Quebec's Parti Québécois government headed by then Premier René Lévesque. The agreement was the first of its kind in Canada and came after intense political negotiation between the council and the province. Claude Lévesque, René Lévesque's son, was in attendance for the special event. Both the Grand Chief Gasanahawi Sky Deer and the Indigenous Affairs Minister Ian Lafreniere spoke during the ceremony.
The real issue back then, 40 years ago, was in order to get a new hospital, with the changes in the way the government worked, healthcare went from Canada to the provinces, and there was no mechanism at the time for the province to help to fund a new hospital. So they came up with an agreement that allowed for Quebec to change its legislation so that they could fund and work together to get this new hospital. So it was groundbreaking at the time.
The Peel watershed in northern Yukon is a pristine ecological region. Now First Nations governments in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories are envisioning a new future for the watershed, a national park. Sarah Connors explains.
The Peel watershed is a place of pristine wilderness. It covers 74,000 square kilometers, from its headwaters in the Yukon to its confluence with the Mackenzie River near Fort McPherson in the Northwest Territories. The Gwich'in and the First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun consider its delicate ecosystem to be a place of significant cultural importance.
It is our homeland and an area that many of our families lived in for thousands of years.
Now, those homelands may become a national park. The Gwich'in Tribal Council, Nacho-Nayakdun, and the territorial and federal governments are conducting a feasibility study to potentially open a national park inside the watershed. The park would be co-developed and co-managed with both nations and Parks Canada.
We can be a destination for domestic and global tourists to see and hear how the Gwich'in have lived in this area for thousands of years.
In 2019, the nations and Yukon government signed the Peel Watershed Regional Land Use Plan. The plan ensures 83% of the watershed is protected from development. Parks Canada says a national park would further ensure the watershed is permanently protected.
It's very strong protection. The mandate is built around protection, education, and providing visitor experiences to all Canadians.
The chief of Nacho-Nayakdun says a national park would benefit the land and its people.
This is a great opportunity for us all to ensure that those lands are respected and protected for all time, and continue to support the traditions and values of our peoples.
The feasibility study will cost around $2 to $3 million to complete, but there's no timeline for it yet. More engagement with communities has to happen before the park can go forward. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Stunning looking place. Time for a quick break. Still to come, bridging the healthcare gap with technology.
I truly believe to improve Indigenous community health, we need Indigenous-led programs.
Welcome back. Earlier this week, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau praised the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technology for helping to provide health care to remote Indigenous communities. The virtual health hub is creating a way for people to access essential health care services while in their communities. Our reporter Rachel May got to see how it works.
I truly believe to improve Indigenous community health, we need Indigenous-led programs.
Dr. Ivar Mendez is the director of the Virtual Health Hub at SIIT. One of the most unique services being offered is a robotic arm that's capable of doing ultrasounds in remote Indigenous communities. Mendez says this technology is not only vital for the health of patients, but provides a special opportunity for expecting parents they might not otherwise get to experience.
Women have to travel to the cities, put in a hotel, and then have their ultrasound. You can imagine having your first ultrasound without your partner, seeing the baby for the first time.
The virtual health hub is also saving the province money on medical travel.
So we did this study for a year, and we save about 24 transportations, which is $240,000. And each of these robots was about $70,000.
When it comes to the gaps we see in healthcare for remote Indigenous communities, Virtual Health Hub electronic engineer Luis Bustamante says it is unacceptable.
Females didn't have that, and that's not right for Canada, you know? This is not a third world country.
Not only is this an essential service for many people in rural areas, this project is creating jobs. The Virtual Health Hub head office, where doctors and technicians will work from, will be located on the Whitecap Dakota Nation. The project is already up and running in 5 remote communities across Saskatchewan, and Dr. Hamza Dani says they already see the impact on patients.
You can find cancer or other, very challenging diseases much earlier on instead of waiting, weeks, months.
Joey Deason is the operations manager for the Virtual Health Hub, and he says the team is happy to help bridge the gap for patients across the province.
We now are in the position where we can harness the power of technology to try to erode some of these barriers and try to enable better access for all people in Canada.
Nurse clinician Brittany Olson says the Virtual Health Hub is a step in the right direction.
So I think being able to provide care at home is going to pave the way for them and help us out as a whole.
When it comes to funding, the federal government budgeted $390 million to build or renovate health facilities, which includes the Virtual Health Hub, which they hope to expand to more communities across the province. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A Cree teacher who incorporates land-based education in the classroom has been honored with Manitoba's prestigious Premier's Award for Excellence in Education. Sierra Bettens has more.
As a high school teacher and guidance counselor, Rebecca Okima has put countless students on the road to success.
My whole premise of being a teacher is be the person I needed to be successful.
Okima, a member of Godlakes First Nation in northern Manitoba, has spent a decade teaching at Strathclair Community School in the town located an hour northwest of Brandon, Manitoba. The school has a predominantly Indigenous student body. Earlier this week, she received the Premier's Award for Excellence in Education. The award is given to a teacher in Manitoba who demonstrates outstanding leadership.
I was super shocked and actually was quite emotional with some of my colleagues there. And I was just really excited because I was happy just to be nominated in the first place.
Okima is a guidance counselor for grades 7 to 12 students and currently teaches geography, current topics in First Nations, Métis and Inuit studies, and even though she is Nehio, a course called Anishinabe Identity through language and land-based learning. To date, she has developed 4 student-initiated courses on Anishinaabe identity.
When I was creating those courses, I wanted to incorporate language, but also identity with them. I think it's super important for students to have a strong sense of identity, especially when they're going through a Western-based education model.
Okima's path to becoming a teacher wasn't linear. She went back to university at 29 while raising her 3 young daughters.
I think the most rewarding part of my job is watching students succeed. And gain confidence. I think that is so important. When you have students that are disengaged from learning and they become engaged in learning again, and you see that brightness in their eyes.
Her experiences inform the motto she shares with students. When a door closes, always leave a window open. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Awesome stuff, Rebecca. Congrats on the prestigious honor. Time for one last quick break. Coming up, a new exhibit for the Manitoba Museum as it reaches a milestone.
And we also wanted to really broaden what people think about in terms of First Nations art. So it's not just paintings or a specific type of paintings. Beadwork is art, clothing is art, storytelling is art.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This one courtesy of Jetta Presley, who was able to come across 2 deer near Vivian, Manitoba. And sure enough, they posed for a great photo. Thanks, Jetta. Be sure to send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at your Friday weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 9 for Halifax and Fredericton. -5 for Kuujjuaq and Nain. 12 above with sunny skies in Montreal, 13 and sunny in Val-d'Or. 12 and sunny in Sault Ste. Marie, sun's out, and 13 for North Bay. 10 in Thunder Bay, showers, and 16 in Sioux Lookout. 13 with rain in God's Lake, 15 for Norway House. 10 and rain in Winnipeg, 18 in Dauphin. Sunny and 20 in Regina, 16 under sunny skies in Saskatoon. +6 and sunny in Buffalo Narrows, 13 in Meadow Lake. In northern Alberta, snow and 5 in Fort Chip, sunny and 13 in Grand Prairie. 11 for Edmonton, cloudy and 12 in Lethbridge. Showers and 14 for Vancouver, 16 and rain in Kamloops. 15 for Prince George, 1 degree warmer in Smithers. +1 with snow in Old Crow, 15 in Whitehorse. -2 in Yellowknife, 2 below with snow in Norman Wells. -13 for Sax Harbor and Paulatuck. -9 with snow in Chesterfield, 11 below, and flurries for Whale Cove. -19 in Resolute, 13 below with snow in Joe Haven. A political organization representing 34 First Nations in southern Manitoba is celebrating 25 years of its existence by sharing their Anishinabe and Dakota heritage with the rest of the province through an exhibit at the Manitoba Museum. Here's T.R. Wheatley with that story.
So this is one of, I consider, the showstoppers.
Amanda McLeod of the Saging Anishinaabe Nation is co-curator of this exhibit called Mandu Minigizoin, a gift from the creator.
And we also wanted to really broaden what people think about in terms of First Nations art. So it's not just paintings or a specific type of paintings. Beadwork is art, clothing is art, storytelling is art.
The exhibit is a collaboration between the museum and the Southern Chiefs organization. It weaves past, present, and future, and there is at least one piece here from each of the 34 Anishinaabe and Dakota nations that SCO represents. Grand Chief Jerry Daniel says it shows the resilience of his nations over the years.
This is a unique opportunity for us not only to mark the 25th anniversary of SCO, it's definitely a reflection of the artistic work of our nation's citizens over the last 100 so years.
There are also historical objects here from old exhibits the Manitoba Museum once had. Archaeologist Amelia Fay is another curator and works here full-time. She says this exhibit is an example of relationship building and reciprocity.
And so working with communities and nations to kind of tell the stories together, talk about exhibits together, build exhibits together, instead of it being kind of a one-sided voice from the museum.
The museum will be home to the exhibit for the next year.
It is from the early 1900s, I believe.
McLeod says this allows more time for visitors from all over Turtle Island to see and learn about Anishinaabe and Dakota culture. Tickets range from $7 to $26 here. However, if you're First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, admission is free. So if you're visiting our city anytime soon, come check out this exhibit and what the Manitoba Museum has to offer. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, T.R. It will be pirouettes done with a twist, as the Royal Winnipeg Ballet is set to premiere its first ballet by an Indigenous choreographer. Happens tonight on its main stage. Sav Jones caught up with the creator to hear more.
Choreographer Cameron Fraser Monroe is making history while sharing a legend dear to his heart. The Tla'amin First Nation member has created the Royal Winnipeg Ballet's first dance, choreographed by an Indigenous person on its main stage. It tells a story he says he's lucky to have heard growing up.
Tall, Wild Man of the Woods, opens on a village where children are being kidnapped after dark and never heard from again until a young woman ventures to save her sister. So she follows Tall up into the woods and finds all of these children glued to the ground, waiting to be cooked and eaten by Tall.
Fraser Monroe is the current choreographer in residence at Canada's premier ballet company. He's worked all his life to get here, performing traditional dances like hoop and grass dance since he was 3 years old.
I bring all of those influences into my choreographic voice. So First Nation styles of dance, Ukrainian dance, ballet, contemporary, it all makes it on stage when I'm choreographing.
Tall, the Wild Man of the Woods, is also unique for having narration. Ballet goers will hear the tale spoken in both English and Ayajutham, a Salish language spoken on the West Coast. All the artistic collaborators Fraser Monroe hired on for the performance are Indigenous, including Navajo costume designer Asa Benally and cellist and composer Chris Dirksen.
I know that there's been some other attempts at Indigenous ballet, and I think this is the first time that this Indigenous ballet is actually done by Indigenous people, and I think that's something really cool and really important to note.
Dirksen is from Treaty 8 in Alberta. The Juno Award-nominated cellist will be performing her pieces live alongside the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra during the performance.
There's also a lot of electronic elements. A lot of my looped cello stuff is in there as well. So it's kind of a mixture between like super traditional classical with added powwow and electronic soundscapes.
Dirksen says that the music tells a big part of the ballet.
If you're going to come to the ballet with an open heart, knowing that we're giving you something completely 100% new and true to ourselves.
You can catch Tall, the Wild Man of the Woods at the Centennial Concert Hall until April 28th. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Great stuff, lots to check out in the city of Winnipeg. But before you do, let's head over to our Ottawa studio, where Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the news, I'll talk to Métis Nation of Ontario President Margaret Froh about the uncertain future of Bill C-53. She says all options are on the table when it comes to achieving self-government recognition for the organization. As well, a new report out of Alberta finds First Nations people are far more likely to leave hospital emergency waiting rooms without treatment than non-First Nations. And Hill Times columnist Rose LeMay says it's time for Canadians to start demanding more accountability out of police forces like the RCMP. All this ahead on tonight's episode of Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Fraser. You can catch Nation to Nation right here in less than 2 minutes' time. We're all out of time for your Friday Junior newscast. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.